Welcome to the London School of English Live. Today, our expert English language trainer, Linda Stott, will help you to answer a very important question. Which type of English learner are you? Linda will help you to explore your learning style and discover how to learn English in a way that is most effective for you. As usual, we encourage you to participate in our live chat next to the video and share your comments and questions during our live stream, and we will answer them during our Q&A session at the end. Here with us today, we also have our colleague, Silvia Copini from our sales team, who has a lot of experience advising our clients on the best training for them. She will take part in our Q&A session too. And before we start with the main content, Silvia will share some information about our English training in London and online. Over to you, Silvia.
Yeah, so the London School has been delivering face-to-face courses since March. And with the summer approaching, we are welcoming more and more people from abroad, despite the travel restrictions. It's great to welcome you all here in London, finally. And for the one who can't, luckily we still have a large variety of online courses, and we're soon going to be starting our IELTS preparation and our legal English preparation online. And it's great to see so many young lawyers and future university students coming to contact us on those courses.
Great. Thank you, Silvia. And it's great to know about the upcoming courses as well. And Linda, welcome back to the live stream. It's great to have you here with us again today. And
thank you so much, Olga.
Over to you for the main content.
Okay, I just want to say welcome to everyone that's joined us, and also welcome if you're watching this as a recorded session. So the question is, which English learner are you? So which preferences or strategies? So which English learner are you? So this is a lovely image in one of our classrooms with an interactive whiteboard at the back. Always great to use those in a classroom. So which English learner are you? Which preferences or strategies work best for you when you are learning or when you are studying? So which preferences or strategies work best for you either when you're learning or studying or self-studying? And why might this topic be important to know? So there are a number of different learning styles or preferences, and in today's session we're going to look at 3 of them. There are lots more, but we're just going to focus on 3 of them in this session today. The first one that we're looking at is visual. Sometimes this is called spatial. The second one that we are going to look at is auditory, or sometimes called oral. And the third one that we're going to look at is kinesthetic, sometimes called physical. So it'd be interesting to ask you these questions. Do you say any of these? So feel free in the comment section to say yes or no to these questions, or these statements rather. So do you say this? I like asking my teacher lots of questions. I want to know about everything. So this is usually the person, you're the person in the class that's, could I ask something? I'm not sure. How do you do this? What's that? How do you pronounce this? Lots and lots of questions. And actually, you're probably an asset to your classmates because you're also helping them to learn by asking these questions. So it's not a negative thing. So I like asking my teacher lots of questions. I want to know about everything. The second one that some people say is, I don't like using a course book. I don't want an actual course book. I prefer using authentic material. So having a look at magazines, newspapers, etc. And then some people might say, well, I don't like that way of learning. I prefer using a course book. Then also we often get people say grammar is my main focus because rules are the most important thing. Now, this could obviously also depend on your culture, because some cultures at school focus predominantly on grammar and less on some of the other skills. So that could be an interesting point that we'll look at in more detail later on in this session. And then the final thing that you might be saying, or a statement that you might make, is you might say, I like doing lots of role plays and real life simulations. So this is actually probably a role play or a discussion that was happening in one of our groups with some of the students in the group. So is this you? Do you like doing lots of role plays and real life simulations and discussions? Well, if you've answered yes to some of these, then probably you'll fall into one or two of the learning preferences that I mentioned: visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. Okay, let's do a quick quiz. And here are 3 questions for you. So pay attention to these questions. Select which option best suits the description. More than one answer might be possible, but you could also answer yes or no if you feel that it is something that you do. So the first question is, do you like writing everything down, and do you take lots of notes? Yes or no? The 3 options to choose from is, would we say that you're visual if you do this? Would we say that you're auditory? Or would we say that you're kinesthetic? So do you like writing everything down? Do you take notes? So if you've said yes to this answer, or to this statement, question rather, then we would probably say that you're a combination of being visual and kinesthetic. So if you like writing things down and taking notes, you're probably a combination of being visual and kinesthetic. There are people joining as the live stream's moving on, and I just want to welcome you if you've just joined us now. The second question is, do you enjoy discussions, interviews, and real life simulations or role plays? So we looked at that in the earlier slide. So do you like writing everything down? Oh no, that was the one before. So that was number 1. Do you like writing everything down? Do you take notes? Yes or no? And the answer to that was, if you said yes, then you're visual and kinesthetic is the answer to that one. Do you like writing everything down? Do you take notes? Then the second one is, do you enjoy discussions, interviews, and real life simulations? In other words, do you enjoy role plays? The 3 options are visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. I'm not sure. I think, do we have a technical problem? Because I can't really hear anybody.
Hi, Linda.
Hi.
And everyone. We might be experiencing some of the problems, because even though we can see people in our live chat at the moment, we actually, some viewers
I noticed that some viewers have commented.
That they don't actually see the recording itself. So they are in the live chat, but the recording, the video and the audio isn't available. So what we're going to do is that we're going to go ahead with the live stream anyway to record the video, and this will be available right after the live stream. Yeah. Okay. So that's how we're going to go ahead with this. So
fantastic. So we'll proceed with
technical issues at the moment.
So we'll proceed with question number 2.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fantastic. Good. Okay. So the second question was, do you enjoy discussions, interviews, and real life simulations or role plays? And this is a lovely image in our school restaurant or dining room, And here are two students doing a real life simulation or a role play. So is this something that you enjoy? If so, could you say that you're visual? Would you say that you're auditory? Or would you say that you're kinesthetic? And probably if you say yes to this statement, then you're a mixture of being auditory and kinesthetic. So you'd be two of these different preferences would suit you if you've said yes to this statement. Then the third statement is, do you like seeing pictures connected to new vocabulary? So do you like seeing pictures connected to new vocabulary? Are you there, Olga? Thank you. Do you like seeing pictures connected to new vocabulary? And I think the situation is here is you're thinking, is my preference, if this is the way that I like to view vocabulary, then, or to learn vocabulary, then are you visual, are you auditory, or are you kinesthetic? And probably you've got it by now that we would say that you're probably, your preference is probably more visual. You like to learn things through visual stimulation. So if you like seeing pictures connected to new vocabulary, then your preference is, as a learner, is probably visual. Great. Well, since we have technical issues and we're going to record this, I just want to say thank you for your patience with our technical issues, and thank you for joining us on the recorded session. So what are these learning preferences all about? So I've talked about visual, I've talked about auditory, I've talked about kinesthetic, but what are they? So I'm going to give you a little bit of a explanation, and of course there's a large amount of info which is not possible to give it to you all right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just give you a brief summary of what these three different preferences could involve. So for instance, if you are a visual learner, if your preference is visual or spatial as some people call it, there are a couple of things that might work for you. So for instance, you recognize words when they are displayed on screen or on a whiteboard. So you recognize words when they are displayed on screen or on a whiteboard. And here, this is wonderful to see. This is a group of students in one of our classrooms with our interactive whiteboard. And we also know that because you can see they're touching the whiteboard and probably moving things around or tapping things, that it also probably fits into a kinesthetic way of learning or preference for learning as well. So you might also find that you learn and study best through pictures, images, and slideshows. So you learn and study best through pictures, images, and slideshows. So watching presentations and actual visuals of graphs and things like that, probably possible that you might retain the information more because this is a learning preference that really works for you. This is visual. It's also possible that you might write lots of lists in order to organize your thoughts. I'm sure a lot of us relate to this, that we've got lots of lists of things that we need to do, and the lists go on and on and on, but it does help us to organize our thoughts and to get clarity about what's important and what we can, push over to another week or another day. Very often visual learners take detailed notes. These are very, very important to a visual learner. So detailed note taking is important to you. So for instance, in a classroom, you might have your laptop or you might have your notebook, and you're the one in the class that's going to be writing down everything that goes on in the lesson. And then reading it all afterwards, obviously. If you're a visual learner, you'll also like to observe the teacher's body language. You'd like to also observe facial expressions in order to understand the language or the message. So this is a screenshot from one of our online lessons. And there we can see our teacher, Johnny, at the top left with the glasses. Yeah, so definitely, obviously, online or face-to-face is great because you've got your teacher there. You can see the facial expressions can help you understand the language, and also extremely useful for pronunciation, yeah, to observe the teacher's body language, facial expressions in order to understand the language or the message. Moving on now to, so we've covered, as I said, a brief piece of information about visual. Of course, if you go onto the internet, there's just reams of more information, but I thought those were the most important ones. So moving on to the next one, next preference, which is auditory. If your preference is auditory or oral, you would enjoy listening activities, dictation, and also listening for clues. So, for instance, in a class, the teacher might play something and ask you at the end, to find, or ask you to find information, and you might have to listen and then provide the full details of what happened in that listening. So if you're if your preference is auditory, you enjoy listening activities, dictation, and listening for clues. You might also prefer verbal explanations. So very often at the school, you might get a hard copy handout with instructions. But if you're an auditory person, you actually want to hear the teacher or the person that you're communicating with. You want them to give you the verbal instructions rather than reading them. Also, if you auditory, your preference is auditory, you like to listen. You prefer to listen and pay attention, and then possibly afterwards you might go away and make some notes and look at those later. Yeah. So you like to listen first and then take notes later. So when you get home, or wherever you have a quiet space, or perhaps in your break, you might make some notes of some of the things that you remember from your lesson. The other thing that auditory people, people with auditory preferences do is they enjoy doing mini presentations. And this is something that we do a lot of at the London School of English. Every week, if you're on a business course, you are asked to give a presentation to your group. If you do general English, you might do a mini presentation about a holiday that you recently did, or you might want to talk about your favorite recipe and do a little presentation about that, or a recent book you've read. So, there are lots of opportunities at the school if you're an auditory learner to do mini presentations. Remember, it doesn't just mean only auditory people like doing presentations, but this would be a strong preference for you. You'd probably really enjoy it. The other thing that auditory learners like is lots of discussions, lots of debates, role plays, and real life simulations. This is another lovely shot from one of our classrooms. And there are two students doing a role play and a discussion with the teacher, Karen, who's monitoring, observing, probably going to give them some feedback after their role play or that real life simulation. Great. That's so nice to see. Good. I'm going to move on now to kinesthetic, and we're going to look at some of the things that you might be feeling or doing if you are a kinesthetic learner. So you remember words by typing them or writing them down. So this helps you to remember. Very good for self-study. If you are doing periods of self-study, you can write things down. Means you're more likely to remember what you're studying. You learn by doing. So It means that you want to actively participate as much as possible. And of course, at the London School of English, we have lots of opportunities for these with role plays, simulations, running out of the classroom to go and get information and come back, for instance. Well, not running, walking. You might have to, sometimes the teacher will put a story outside and you have to go and read it and come back and report back to your group or to one of your partners that you're working with in your class. So you learn by doing, which means you want to actively participate as much as possible. You like to practice any new language you've learned through lots and lots of speaking activities. And of course, the methodology of our school, one of the methodologies is lots and lots of speaking in order to build up your fluency, and of course, to focus also always on your accuracy, fluency, accuracy, fluency, accuracy. So you enjoy doing role plays, real life simulations, practical activities, and you learn best when trying something out for yourself. So by doing the actual thing, trying it, trying a grammar exercise, and then seeing how you manage that. Well, that's really all there is about these definitions of these 3 learning preferences. If you're interested in knowing more about this, there is a useful website with a link, and perhaps Olga will put that up in the chat box, or perhaps link it up on the recording when we put that up. So there are, of course, more things to consider regarding your learning preferences. So for instance, do you prefer learning online? So that's a big issue that people have, not an issue, but that's a big topic that people have started talking about is, of course, with COVID, more and more lessons have been online. Do you prefer being online, or do you prefer face-to-face? Which is better for you? This is an important preference. Do you prefer a combination of face-to-face and online lessons, so hybrid lessons? Some people have said they prefer to maybe have an online lesson in the morning and come in to the school in the afternoon, or the other way around. What time of day works best for you? So, for instance, I prefer studying in the morning, and I say prefer because, of course, sometimes it isn't possible, just to study in the morning. However, knowing what works best means that I can take advantage of this and make good use of this time in the mornings. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at a questionnaire which was taken from English Teaching Professional issue 17, October 2000, and was written by Jim Wingate. And I just want to say a special thanks to Rachel Clark for sourcing this. So there are 20, I can't remember now how many there were. I think there were, there are 27 questions. And this is something that you will do at home. So probably you're going to have to pause it. But I thought it'd be quite useful because you'll be practicing, or not practicing, you'll be using all your different learning preferences in order to complete this questionnaire. And what this questionnaire is, it's asking 27 questions, or making 27 statements. And you then decide which you think is the strongest. Which of these do you feel the strongest about? And each of the statements corresponds to one of the preferences, so that by the end of doing the quiz, or the questionnaire rather, you will be able to see quite clearly, are you visual, are you oral, or are you kinesthetic? Or are you slightly more of one and less of the other? And so that could be quite useful. And we'll discuss, after we've done the questionnaire, we'll discuss why this could be useful for you. We'll look at it in a little bit more detail. So the first one is learning. So for instance, we could say, I learn by listening, by talking to others, and by talking to myself in my head. So the first one is learning. I learn by listening, by talking to others, and by talking to myself in my head. I try out things by talking them through before doing them. In question 2, I learn by seeing. I need an overall view and purpose. I'm cautious until I'm mentally clear. I like to see something first and then do it. Question 3, I learn by doing, by manipulating things. I like hands-on experience. I do it first, then talk about it or see it being done. So how this questionnaire works is you'll look at these 3 questions based on the topic of learning, and you'll decide which one you feel really strongly about. So for instance, question number 1, I don't feel so strongly about that, so I'm going to give it 1 point. Question 2, I feel really strongly about, and so I'm going to give it 3 points. Question 3, I don't feel that strongly about, but I'm not weak on it, so I'm going to give it 2 points. So we can see now that if you feel very strongly and you agree strongly, you give it 3 points. If you feel 50-50 about it, then 2 points. If you don't really agree with it, but it could be possible, you would give it 1 point. So you go through all of the statements and you score yourself 1, 2, or 3. And I'll explain to you how at the end, how you work out your score. But what you will have to do is you will have to pause this video, slowly read through everything, write down your scores. Remember to put down the question numbers, so 1, 2, 3, and then next to it, what your score is, and then move on to the next question. I'm not going to be reading all the questions because, of course, you will have the opportunity to pause, play back, and listen again and look again. So, of course, this is going to cover all your different preferences. Because in some occasions you'll have my voice, in some occasions you'll just have the text, and of course you have the opportunity to walk away, make yourself a nice cup of coffee, and come back if you're kinesthetic. So we're going to move on to question 4, which has got to do with conversation. So the 4th one is, I'm not very talkative. I use gestures and movements. I use action words. I communicate feelings. So again, if you feel strongly about that, you will put in 3. If not, 2. If very weak, 1. I'm talkative and may monopolize the conversation. I tell the whole of an event in sequence. I need the whole picture and lots of detail. I select carefully what to say. I communicate vision and pictures. Don't forget to write down the question number. So here, question 4, question 5, question 6, because when you come to the end of this questionnaire, there will be a chart where you will take each question and mark down the points that you gave yourself for each question. It'll make a lot more sense when you get to the end of the questionnaire. If you just stick to what I'm saying, everything will work out, hopefully. Right, let's move on to reading. So reading is, I enjoy action-packed books and stories. That's number 7. Number 8, I'm a strong, successful, fast, quiet reader. Question 9, I enjoy reading aloud and listening. So as you're going through, based on the definition I gave you, probably you're going to start feeling, there's a theme here. So there are certain things that definitely are more for visual, definitely more for auditory, and definitely more for kinesthetic. Okay, let's move on to self. And have a look at what we've got there. So self, Question 10, I'm easily distracted. I can repeat things accurately. I can mimic accents, tone, and pitch. Question 11, I'm neat, orderly, quiet, observant, and organized. Wow, that even as the statement says, sounds very, very organized and neat. Appearance is important. Question 12, I move a lot. I respond to physical rewards, for example, touching rather than words. So again, we can see this theme moving through, and we can imagine that question 12, if you've said, given yourself 3 points for this particular question, probably you're going to be, your preference is kinesthetic. But remember, it changes, it could change for each of the different descriptions. So reading, you might have a different preference. Speaking, you might have a different preference. And learning, you might have a different preference. So don't just assume that you know what's going on and what kind of learner you are. Give yourself the time to work through this slowly and be as honest as you can, not what you imagine yourself to be. Good. If we move on now, how do you remember? How do you remember? So this is quite important because, of course, you're learning, also studying. So how do you remember? What is your preference in order to help you remember? So I remember what I see. I memorize by picturing. I have problems remembering verbal instructions. So now question 14, I remember words or what I hear. I memorize by repeating words in my head. I remember an overall impression of what I experience, and I memorize by doing. So again, I remember words that I hear. So imagining, we can quite clearly see now that this is an oral or auditory learner. And I remember what I see is quite clearly a visual learner. So we start to see a theme building up through these. Good. Let's move on to writing. Knowing about these different preferences can really help you to make absolute full use of your learning experience, and also support you, because you know this is how this is going to work for me, and it's going to mean that I'm going to improve and remember and do things better. So with writing, I have naturally neat handwriting. My writing is thick, pressured, and unclear. I'm better at talking than writing. I like to talk to others or myself while writing. So what's great about this is because you begin to be okay about the kind of learner that you are. Because sometimes as a teacher, some people come and they say, oh, my handwriting's really bad. You know, and somehow this creates a sort of a pressure, or people start to feel, oh, I'm less of this and I'm not enough of this. And we can begin to see that all the different things that you are probably just preferences. And it's about looking at these and how you can harness them. Of course, we all want to improve and we want to be better. And so, yes, if you're finding that one of these preferences is limiting you, then of course you need to think about how you can push yourself a little bit more to get more balanced. So in the end, that maybe you don't have one preference more than the other, because of course in life we need a little bit of everything. Yeah, spice is the variety of life after all. Good. Let's move on to spelling. So number 19, I count out letters with body movements. For example, moving my finger. I check spelling with my internal feelings. So question 20. So I've put a little bit of it was a little bit naughty of me, but I've put in a mistake here. And I would like you to see if you can guess the mistake. So I'm an accurate speller. I see words I confused about spelling words I've never seen before. So there's a spelling mistake, or there's a grammar mistake rather, in this sentence. Well, without wasting too much time, the mistake here is I forgot to use the verb am. So I'm an accurate speller. I see words. I am confused. So if you got that right, well done. So 21, I spell words as they sound, so phonetically, not as they look. I spell rhythmically. So again, starting to see this theme of whether you're a visual learner or an oral learner or a kinesthetic learner. And we've got 2 more to go. The next one we're going to look at is imagination. So how does your imagination work? What is your preference when you are using your imagination? So let's move on to that. So question 22, I want to talk while imagining. I like to act out the image. I'm weak on details, strong on actions and emotions. I hear sounds and voices. I'm good at sequences and creating dialogue. I'm responsive to music. I see vivid images. I can see possibilities, details appear. I'm good at long-term planning and on overviews. So again, useful stuff to help you harness the preferences that you are stronger at, but again, stressing the need to work on the preferences where you're slightly weaker. And the last one we're going to look at is voice. Question 25. So when speaking, my chin is down, my voice is loud. I use different tones and melody. When speaking, my chin is up, my voice is high. I speak fast. Again, really useful stuff to help you with gauging what your preference is. We're going to look at the score, how the scoring will work. And as I said to you right in the beginning, is you'll need to pause each part of this questionnaire, write down the question, and next to it, you're going to write whether you've scored yourself a 3, meaning very strong, you really, really strongly relate to this, 2, yes, 50-50, and 1, not so much. Once you've completed all of this, then you can go to the score chart, which Olga will show us shortly. And in the score chart, you will take each question number and put in your score. So right at the very beginning, on question 1, I scored myself 1 point. So next to question 1, you put 1 point. For question 2, I scored myself 3 points. And for question 3, 2 points. And you go through each question and you write in your score. And at the end of it, you add it all up and you can see the columns. The first column, 2, 6, 8, 11 questions is visual. And 1, 5, 9, 10 is oral. And 3, 4, 7 is kinesthetic. So at the end, you will get your total scores. And that will give you a very, very, very good idea about what kind of learning preference or learning style you have. And as I mentioned earlier, we will, Sylvia and I will have a little bit of a discussion about these different preferences and why they're good to know, why they can work, and what you should watch out for. So over to you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening. Over to you, Olga and Sylvia.
Thank you very much, Linda, for this great content and lots of useful tips on different learning styles. And as we mentioned before in our live chat, we know that there are some technical difficulties with this live stream. So even though our viewers are able to join us on this live chat, they actually can't view or hear the video, and we're hoping that we will be able to share the video as a recorded video after the live stream, and we apologize for any technical difficulties.
That's a first.
This is the first
in all this long history of YouTube videos. I think not too bad, Olga.
Yeah, it's the first in over
not
a year.
Too shabby.
Yeah, and it seems to be just platform dependent. So
It's
not much
life.
that we could do at the moment. But thank you, Linda and Sylvia. And Linda is always very insightful, and just trying to anticipate the type of questions that our viewers might ask in the Q&A. There are several that I would like to ask both you and Sylvia as well. For example, if someone has a strong tendency to learn English in one particular way, say they love grammar and learning from books, but have difficulty with spoken English and listening. I think this is something that we quite often see.
Yes.
Is this a weakness, or could it even be a strength? And how would you advise to learn English to people with individual learning styles, for example, visual, auditory, kinesthetic?
I'll go first.
Yes.
I'll let you rest for a little bit, Linda.
I'm just going to have a sip of water. Thank
well
you.
deserved. Well, I think learning language through grammar and books is perhaps the most common way in many cultures. That's how you would approach learning. Anyhow, so it's quite normal, and people get attached to a way of learning and they think that's how I do it. Based on what Linda was saying, perhaps it comes to, you may say, okay, so I must be a visual learner. I don't think that is linked to a specific learning style. I think it's more cultural, or what we are used to, or what yes, our background is. It's also easier. It's what most subjects are studied through a book, and through exercises in practice. So it's a very common theme across all our clients. They come to us, and we can see even from our online test, they do very well. And then when we move to the second phase of our testing, because we're quite thorough, testing, which is the speaking part, then we see the difference between the ability of completing a grammar task to the ability of actually expressing themselves or hearing the teacher's instructions.
No, it's a very valid point that you make, Sylvia, because as you said, in certain cultures, there is this focus more on grammar, less on sort of spontaneous speaking, or, whatever it is. But I have to also say that, I think a lot depends on your level, because of course, if you're a beginner, or you're sort of elementary, or you're sort of a lower level, you might be attached to that grammar book not because of cultural reasons, but because that your grammar is your weakness. You know that you need it in order to speak more fluently and accurately and get your message across. So it's an interesting question that you pose, Olga, because I think it depends on where you're at with your learning journey. So I think in certain respects, it's actually not a negative. But of course, if you're at a much higher level and you have a good grasp of grammar, but you're holding on to it as a sort of a dummy, as a sort of a what's the word? A sort of a sympathy. Zone. Yeah, like a comfort, then of course, then it becomes not so useful, because then you've got everything you need, but you're still holding on to something that's kind of limiting your ability to progress.
Great. Thank you, Linda and Sylvia. So it's the combination of the two, the strength and then developing in any challenging areas. And,
absolutely.
Can learning style change over time?
There are several studies, and most of it say that you don't. And learning styles, apart from language, is in general, what we learn about anything in life. And I think some people do prefer certain things, and then they get attached to it because they see they're good at it, and which is fair, is just important, I think. And some teachers are very good advocate of pushing their learners to explore other means of learning. So, okay, you're great
Yeah.
with visual. Let's try something a little bit more kinesthetic. And people may get to like different way of learning. I don't think they change their preferences, but they like maybe exploring different way of learning.
That's a very good point, because it depends also on your preferences as an adult, depend on what you were exposed to in your school, when you were younger or a child. And, in certain schools, they might push a certain preference. So you don't get maybe enough visual. You just get the teacher standing up there telling you, blah, 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 this is how you do it. So you might develop a certain false preference, so to speak, and then when you become an adult and you start working, you think, oh, hey, I'm being exposed to visual, kinesthetic, wow, and so it could change. But perhaps you do know deep down, as you were saying earlier, that you kind of know what your preferences are. You know where you feel good and what works for you and where you're studying the best. But I just wanted to mention one thing which is quite important, that we're not advocating, and that speaking to everybody out there, we're not advocating that you do this questionnaire and then say, okay, this is what I am. That I'm not saying I'm a learner preference doctor, and then once you get your diagnosis that you say, well, that's it, I'm not going to be doing anything else, because that becomes dangerous. If you get to a situation where you say, well, I can't do this because it's not visual and I'm a visual learner, that could be really dangerous. I think that you need to look at it, have a little bit of fun with it, take note of it, but don't actually take it to the point where you're saying, I can't do anything else because I did this questionnaire and I've been shown that this is my best preference.
In fact, actually, I might add on, you should do all the one that you are not comfortable with.
Exactly.
The one you're comfortable with,
Push yourself.
It's easy. Exactly. And if it's true that learning styles is just how we perceive the world and how we memorize things. So if one preference is easier, then you need a teacher to push you for the others. So I think you should actually pay even more attention to the one that you feel, oh, I'm not comfortable with, but let's try. Because the more senses, that's some of the approaches that there are, the more senses you use, which is the visual kinesthetic, the more the easier it is to hold on to information. So you can remember visually, auditory, kinesthetically, you have all of those, and it's easier to remember.
Yes.
Whether it's the meaning of a word or the sound or the intonation, stress, all of those. So
yes, because sometimes you'll get in lessons, you'll get somebody in the class will say, that's interesting. Could you show me a picture? What does it look like? Or do you have a video to show us about that particular thing? We might have been doing lots of pictures and videos and other things, but maybe on that particular word, somebody might say, could you play us a song, that might have some of these words in it? So, I think, what's good about discussing this topic is because it's creating an awareness about it. Because, of course, as teachers, and you yourself as well, Sylvia, although you're in sales, you're a well-trained and fully experienced teacher. So, we try and adopt all of these activities because ultimately the more fun learning a language is, doesn't matter what your preference is, you're going to retain that information, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Linda and Sylvia. And final question is, Linda, which you already touched upon a little bit. How do we address individual learning styles in our teaching, both in our center in London and also online?
I'll say, although I don't teach at the London School, but there are some classic, I guess.
No, but you're an experienced teacher, so you know you've got a lot of information and knowledge to draw on.
There are different teachers, and we may actually push some of those learning styles in different ways. There could be the teacher who's a bit more obvious in those styles because they like it, and now they're a little more subtle. But they're, visual. Well, that's the most obvious. I guess there isn't a teacher who doesn't have a visual visual input, whether, as Linda was saying, putting pictures, but even simply writing a word on the board, whether there is an electronic board, is online, or whether it's a physical board. So those things happen in all scenarios. But the kinesthetic, there are some teachers who really, for instance, I like it when it comes to stress and intonation, typing, showing the syllable and typing and showing where they're stressful. And some teachers, some of the adults may like, that's a bit strange. But then they're like, I can see it, I can feel it, and start getting the rhythm.
It's the same with syllables, right?
Exactly, counting it, exactly. But it could also be like trying to explain a feeling and say, okay, try to remember when you felt that way. That's also very kinesthetic. It generates quite a lot of discussions. So, yes, I was there, and all kind of grammar comes out. So there are loads of ways in which a teacher, whether it's on the face-to-face course or online, can draw those styles into a lesson.
Sorry, I think you're absolutely right. I think that, it's quite important. And I think this is what we do so well at the London School of English, is that recognizing exactly what the student needs, not just in terms of language, but recognizing who they are as a person and asking, what are the preferences? Okay, but I know that you like to do it like this, but for this session, we're going to do it this way because we're in a group, and we need to accommodate everybody's preferences and needs, and also to push some people. Try and see how you do it, because you're going to need this skill in your working life or in your personal life. So I think what we do quite well is suss out what people need and then adjust. Come away and think, that didn't, work as well as I thought. Next lesson, going in and producing something that works for everybody. So I think we work really hard at trying to accommodate everybody's preferences. But as you rightly said, being very mindful of people who are, I wouldn't say weaker, because it's not about weak or strong. We don't want to get into that kind of language and also take it so seriously. But just to say, if writing is an issue, don't worry about it. Let's make a fun thing out of it. Do a fun story or write something fun, so that you start to push yourself a little bit more with your preferences.
That's great. Thank you, Linda and Sylvia. And just to add, we've got so many wonderful reviews from clients, specifically talking about this, about tailor-made training specific to their particular needs. So that's just always good to see. On this note, I would like to wrap up this live stream, and I hope that our viewers who watched this in the recorded version,
yes, thank you so much.
It. And we're waiting for you because we've got a lot of other live streams coming up. So please be sure to check our YouTube channel, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you next time, either on one of our live streams, or maybe if you are in London, you can come and visit us with any questions. Sylvia might actually be there talking to you.
She might be waiting for you at the front door.
Yeah, exactly.
With a cup of coffee.
And then if you would like to have your English training online, that's also possible. Just contact us on our website, and we'll be happy to help you. So on this note, thank you, Linda and Sylvia, for your wonderful input and all your fantastic ideas and content as you always. And we'll see you next time.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Olga.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sylvia.
Bye-bye,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody. Thank you
Bye.
so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.